Can you manage anxiety naturally? I want you to picture this. You wake up with a pit in your stomach and you think, oh no, not again. Why do I feel anxious? I just woke up. You grab your phone to distract yourself. You scroll on TikTok or Instagram until you feel better and then you realize you're running late. You think, oh my gosh, now I'm running late. My boss is going to be at me. Am I going to lose my job? Everything just starts to feel like a massive rush. Your heart is beating. You've got shallow breathing and you just think, why can't I ever just be on time? You stub your toe on the bed. You start screaming. You feel so bad and you are just an absolute mess. Welcome to the What's Eating You podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, and I'm a psychologist, published author, and public speaker here to educate and validate. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the What is Eating You podcast. I'm your clinical psychologist and host, Stephanie Giorgio. And if it's your first time here, let me know. Take a screenshot of this and tag me on Instagram. I would love to share it. And if you're a regular, welcome back, my friend. I'm so proud that you were here. And of all the things you could have done, you're choosing to invest in your learning today, and that is something to be extremely proud of. Today's question came from my Psychology Sunday box on my Instagram, and it was about natural ways to manage anxiety without medication. Now, that little saga I gave you earlier is something that many people experience. They wake up, they feel anxious, and more often than not, they don't know why. Now, if we continue down that story, you jump in your car and you're driving and there's an accident on the road. You start stressing. No, not today. I've got a meeting at 9 a.m. Why would anyone book a meeting at 9 a.m.? Are they trying to sabotage me? You know what? It's probably because they don't like me. They're always acting weird when I'm in the office and they probably booked this early meeting because they knew I wouldn't be there, and I just, bang, you hit the car in front of you. Just what you needed. So do you experience anxiety? How do you even know if you have it? This episode is going to uncover what anxiety actually is and whether you have it, the difference between quote-unquote healthy anxiety and an anxiety disorder, the types of anxiety disorders, why medication might be prescribed for anxiety and when you should consider it, the two types of anxiety, and how to naturally manage anxiety with or without medication. Disclaimer, I'm not a psychiatrist or a medical doctor, so please make sure you always seek professional advice. So let's get into it. I did a quick Google search on natural ways to help anxiety, and the answers were just so boring and straightforward and just unhelpful. Meditation, acupuncture, herbs, and yes, all of these things can be useful tools to calm your nervous system, but they do not get rid of anxiety or help you understand why your anxiety exists in the first place. Yes, all of these tools can help manage your physiological arousal, which is basically your nervous system. So these are all the physical sensations of anxiety that we'll go through. Things such as a racing heart, shallow breathing, just feelings of overwhelm. There are tools that can calm that, but you're not actually healing anxiety or getting rid of it. You're just learning to manage the symptoms, which is really important, because the truth is, unless you manage the initial symptoms of it, you can't access the part of your brain that you need to do the deeper work. So let's first understand what anxiety is. It's a stress response that we all experience from time to time. Now, some anxiety is a normal part of life. So, for example, you might feel a certain amount of unease or uncertainty when it comes to stressful situations, such as taking a test, giving a presentation, meeting new people, driving to a new place. And in many cases, a small amount of anxiety every so often is actually a good thing. It motivates you and it helps you be aware of potential dangers so you can be prepared. But the issue is our brains have gotten confused with what is a real stressor and what is a perceived stressor. What that means is your brain perceives an email from your boss as a stressor, and your heart starts beating and you get that anxious response when it's not immediately threatening to your survival. So it is up to us to teach our brain what is a real stressor and what is a perceived stressor. Otherwise, your brain is going to be red flagging absolutely everything that happens in your life. Now, the difference between anxiety and, say, an anxiety disorder is how often you experience it and how much it impacts your life. So what are some of the common signs and symptoms of anxiety? Feeling nervous, restless, or tense. Having a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom. Having an increased heart rate. Breathing rapidly or hyperventilating. Sweating. Trembling. Feeling tired or weak. Trouble concentrating or thinking about anything other than the present worry. Having trouble sleeping. Having gastrointestinal problems, such as having to go to the bathroom. Having difficulty controlling worry. Having the urge to avoid things that trigger anxiety. So one of the really common things in an anxiety disorder is that there's this avoidance of things that make you anxious, right? Now, the biggest issue is people think anxiety is bad. It feels bad, but it doesn't mean it is bad for you. You're not going to die from feeling anxious, even though it feels like you might. Many people call ambulances because they genuinely think they're having a heart attack, because that's what a panic attack can feel like. So the first thing you need to know is that anxiety is actually your friend. You just have to learn to work with it, not against it. The first thing you need to know is essentially there's two types of anxiety that happen in your brain. And unless you understand these two types of anxiety, you are never going to be successful at managing it effectively. The first type of anxiety is called physical anxiety. I call it physical anxiety or feeling anxiety because you feel it in your body. So think of this. These are all the feelings that you don't necessarily see or you may see. Sweating, trembling, heavy breathing, rapid heart rate. You feel it in your body, tingling. And these are usually the symptoms that come on first or they can come on second. The second type of anxiety is called thought anxiety, and it's triggered by what we think about. Did I leave the stove on? Is my friend ignoring me? Did I forget my passport? Now, these thoughts can trigger feeling anxiety, and feeling anxiety can trigger thought anxiety because you can think, why is my heart beating? Why do I have this pit in my stomach? Have I done something wrong? Is something bad going to happen? And people say, what if I have both? That is absolutely fine. What you need to know is that the type of anxiety you're experiencing requires a different strategy. Before I go into those strategies, I'm going to talk about anxiety disorder so you can just know the difference. The most common anxiety disorder is something called generalized anxiety disorder. And this is a constant and pervasive fear and worry about everyday situations. Am I going to be late? Does my friend like me? Am I going to fail? And if it reaches a peak, that's when it can cause panic attacks. Then the fear of having panic attacks is actually called panic disorder. So generalized anxiety disorder, it's general, it's about a range of all different things. Do you have it? The first thing to ask yourself is, are you spending more days worrying about things than you're not worrying about things? Is it interfering with your day-to-day functioning? Are you getting affected at your job, your friendships? Is it affecting your day-to-day life? And it has to be occurring for at least 6 months. So you have to experience it on more days than not. It has to affect your life and it has to be occurring for a specific period of time. That's how you differentiate the difference between, say, anxiety and a disorder, right? The next type of common anxiety disorder is social anxiety disorder. And this is the preoccupation of negatively being judged in front of other people or embarrassing yourself in front of other people. It's not social situations, it's more embarrassment or fear that other people are judging you negatively. So the difference is that people with social anxiety, they don't worry about everything. It's just those two main things. Then we've got separation anxiety disorder, which is separating from a primary figure or a parent. Usually we see that in children. We've got a specific phobia, such as agoraphobia, coulrophobia, the list goes on. So having a specific anxiety about an object or situation. And then there are a couple of other ones. So you've got agoraphobia, which is the fear of enclosed spaces where escape might be difficult. So this is such as if you've got agoraphobia, and this can come along with other anxiety conditions as well. People get this confused with claustrophobia. So claustrophobia is small spaces, whereas agoraphobia is the fear of being in places where escape may be difficult. So people think agoraphobia is leaving your home, which might be the case, because if you fear you're going to go to the shops and you won't be able to leave, then yes, you might be stuck at home. OCD is not an anxiety disorder anymore. It used to be, but that comes in another category, so I won't address that in this. But I'm just going to address generalized anxiety today because it's what many people experience. It's very common, and it's only getting more and more common as society gets more and more stimulating and stressful. So the first thing I encourage you to do is just ask yourself, where did your anxiety come from? When did it start? Were you an anxious child? Did you witness your parents fighting growing up? Because if so, that already puts your nervous system in the red zone, right? So if you're a child, depending on what you hear, what you witness, what you see, how your parents respond to you, how your mother responded to your needs as a baby, will honestly set the scene as to whether you have anxiety later on in life. And it's very true that very often anxious parents create anxious children. This can be through many different things, right? There's a theory of epigenetics, and this is a new and rapidly growing science that focuses on how life experiences influence the function of genes. As a result of life events, chemicals attach themselves to DNA and direct gene activities. However, it doesn't mean that if your parent's anxious, you're going to be anxious. It really comes down to how your parents respond to your needs growing up as well. If you feel safe, if you feel secure, then there's no reason to feel anxious growing up. But if you grew around a parent who's always worried, always saying, oh my gosh, don't do this, don't do that, don't come home late, don't do that, your perception of the world might be that the world is dangerous, and that might perpetuate anxiety. Maybe you first became anxious when you were in high school and you were bullied. If you experience anxiety, I want you to go back to where it came from. Did you feel scared as a child around your parents? Were they always angry? Were they drinking alcohol? Did they dismiss your needs? Do they have their own mental health issues going on? Where does your anxiety stem from? Because unless you know this and unless you unpack it, you can do all the natural remedies, you can do all the acupuncture, but it's never going to go away because the reason your nervous system gets activated isn't being addressed. Because deep down, your brain has this fear of not being safe. So you have to do the work to unpack this. So when you do get anxious, you're like, aha, there it is. That's where it's coming from. Okay? That's the first thing I want you to ask yourself. Where is it coming from? Secondly, how do you know it's there? What happens when we feel anxious? Biologically, anxiety triggers our fight or flight response. So I want you to picture your hand and make a fist with your hand, right? Put your thumb inside and put your fingers over the top and make a fist. This is your brain, right? Now, inside your hand is your thumb, And I want you to imagine that your thumb is your fight or flight alarm system. This is actually called the amygdala, and it comes from the Greek word almond because it's a small almond-shaped region in your brain. Now, this little survival mechanism is designed to protect you from imminent danger. So maybe you're walking down the street and you see a bus coming up. And then all of a sudden, your amygdala starts sending warning signals like, don't cross the road, careful, that bus is coming up real fast. Maybe your heart even starts to beat a little bit quicker, right? Now, if we avoid the bus and we're safe, then our amygdala will calm down and it will send a message, signal to the hypothalamus, which then activates the sympathetic nervous system, but then the parasympathetic nervous system will then calm it down, right? So your sympathetic nervous system, just think of this as like the system, the alarm system, and it's like adrenaline, cortisol. It's preparing your bodies to fight, flight, freeze, flee from the stressor. So as you're crossing the road, the bus is coming quickly, your brain is sending these messages, it's sending distress signals saying, warning, warning, you're in danger. And it's sending adrenaline and cortisol. These are the two stress hormones that go through your body. Now, the issue doesn't really know, the brain doesn't really know the difference between a real stressor or imagined. Okay, so you can say, oh my God, that bus is so close, I'm going to get hit. I feel so awkward crossing the road. Everyone's looking at me on the bus versus the bus actually coming close to hitting you. See how I created a stressful situation in my mind by my thoughts versus what was reality really. What happens is the brain sends the messages. If you perceive a stressor, or whether it's a real stressor, adrenaline and cortisol go through your body. They pump the blood so you're able to fight or flight. You feel shaky because adrenaline makes you shaky. You feel dizzy and faint because the blood is rushing to wherever it needs to be in your body. So whenever you get these symptoms, you're breathing rapidly because your body's trying to take in more oxygen. Whenever you get these symptoms, think, aha, that's cool. This is my body actually going into the system mode to protect me. The system is being activated. Remember, sympathetic nervous system. Your brain is feeling really sympathetic for you and it's, we need to help her, we need to save her. So it's doing all these automatic things. Switches off your digestion. You don't need that right now. So a lot of people need to go to the bathroom. We need to get rid of what's inside to get this girl or boy ready to fight or flight. So the next time you feel these symptoms, I want you to say, aha, that's my body having sympathy for me right now. It's my sympathetic nervous system. That's why my heart's beating. It's just trying to get blood around my body. It feels really uncomfortable, but thanks, brain. Thanks for trying to protect me. So that is what happens. Now, during this process, when you're in sympathetic arousal, when you're in fight or flight, when your hand starts to open and reveal that amygdala that's flashing inside your palm of your hand, your frontal lobe, your fingers, which are the front of your brain, lift and your thinking brain goes offline. So when you're in this fight or flight state, you can't access clear thinking, you can't access your judgment, you can't access your memory, you can't access logical thoughts. So this is why it's pointless trying to talk yourself out of anxiety. Calm down, everything's going to be okay. You know what you want to do when someone asks you to calm down when you feel anxious? You want to tell them where to go. So what you need to know is whenever you feel physically anxious, you have to speak the language of the amygdala, which means you have to do something physical. So if you feel a physical symptom, you need a physical strategy. A physical strategy that's natural is deep belly breathing. So really going deep and long exhales, because people usually take short, sharp exhales when they're anxious, but you need to elongate it. Focusing on what's around you. You can do some grounding. What are 5 things you can see? What are 5 things you can touch? Someone asked me last night on my Instagram story if sour lollies work. Yes, because sour lollies bring your attention to the present moment and to your senses, and that signals to your brain that you're safe. So physically, we need to calm down the cortisol. We need to bring the adrenaline down, and doing something physical can do that. That's more of an acute strategy. If you have longer term anxiety, you need strategies that bring your cortisol down on a consistent basis. So things you can do every day which are natural include exercise, amazing for anxiety. Okay? Things such as walking, bike riding, lifting weights, because that increases dopamine and serotonin, which are your feel-good neurotransmitters, and that will bring down, that counteracts cortisol and adrenaline. Okay, so try that. Second thing is, don't have caffeine on an empty stomach. This raises your cortisol. It can make you feel more anxious. Have something to eat first and try and delay your caffeine intake by 60 to 90 minutes. I can do a whole other podcast episode on that. If you want it, let me know. And then once you physically calm your body down, so physical strategies have to be something physical, walking, journaling, chewing, drinking water, putting cold on your face, getting outside. They're immediate things, but long-term things you can do to bring physical anxiety down is meditation, deep diaphragmatic breathing, grounding, journaling, just things that slow you down. Because if you're already an anxious person, your baseline level of arousal is likely to be high. So we need to do parallel work here for anxiety. We need strategies to deal with the quick, immediate anxiety, and then everyday strategies to bring your baseline level of arousal down. So it means you're not going to flip into that hyper arousal as often or as quickly. The second thing you can do is you need to then deal with your thought anxiety. So thought anxiety is triggered by what if thoughts, catastrophic thinking, and worst case scenario. Here's an example. You get invited to an event, a party, and your brain starts thinking, oh my God, what am I going to wear? No one's going to talk to me. It's going to be so awkward. I haven't been in the office in ages. I don't really know that person too well. Maybe I shouldn't go. I've put on so much weight. People are going to look at me. Then you start to get this pit in your stomach. You feel sick. And then immediately you want to decline the invite, even though you know it's really good to network and go to these events. Typical thought anxiety. Because these thoughts are literally thoughts you decided to create based on the situation of being invited to the party. Now, the only thing you have control over is what you think about the party. Believe it or not, you can actually choose the thoughts you listen to. Because how do you think someone would feel if they think, yay, finally an event. It's been ages since I've got to go anywhere. I'm going to wear that new outfit. I'm going to do that new hairstyle. I'm going to talk to people I haven't connected with in ages. It's going to be a really nice time. Do you think that person is going to feel the same way as the first person? No. And the only difference is their thoughts. So in order to manage your anxiety long term, you have to understand what your thoughts are and what thoughts are making you anxious. So here's an activity. The next time you feel anxious, I want you to calm yourself down with a physical strategy as mentioned, and then write down what is making me anxious. What is it making me think? What am I thinking right now? What was I thinking in that moment? And you'll be surprised. People say, oh, I didn't have any thoughts. Yes, you did. You probably just weren't thinking of your thoughts in the moment because people usually just go with their thoughts. They just go with the flow. Then what you need to do is you have to actually work on these thoughts. You see, people try to control the party and they just think, oh, I'm just not going to go to parties anymore. Or they try to control the emotion. I'm just going to drink to take the edge off. You can't just rely on controlling your emotions, and you can't just rely on controlling events. You have to control your thoughts. The first thing you do is you challenge it. You say, how do I know no one's not going to talk to me? Where's the evidence that people are going to laugh at me? Thanks, brain. Thanks for trying to protect me, but I'm noticing that these are just anxious thoughts. They're not my thoughts. They're anxious thoughts that were developed in childhood or developed when I got bullied or developed as a way to protect me. But you don't need to protect me anymore. I'm a grown-ass woman or man and I can do it myself. And then you're going to start to reframe this and think, I'm excited to go to the party. I'm nervous, and that's okay. I might have thoughts that people won't talk to me, but I don't actually know that's going to happen. And I can always leave. Yeah, people with anxiety need an escape plan to say, you know what? I can always leave the party. And it's cool. I'll go there, and if I want to leave, just tell people I've got another event on. No big deal. But you have to do the things that are making you anxious in order to teach your brain that it's safe to do it. And then by repeating those actions, you start to rewire your neural networks, because you're like, funny that. No one laughed at me. I didn't get called fat. People actually spoke to me, actually had a good time. And then what happens is that rewires your brain's perception of parties. And then you start to feel different every time this comes up. Now, to answer the question, do you actually need medication? When is it appropriate to take? Again, everyone is different, so always seek your own professional psychiatric advice on medication. I personally believe that for most people, medication should be a last resort. I think that people use it very quickly nowadays without being fully informed about how it works. If you're on anxiety medication, do you know how it works? If you're on antidepressants right now and you're listening to this, do you know how they work? Did you research how they work, or did you trust your doctor? Yeah? So unless you are literally so anxious and depressed that you cannot function, you may need medication to help you get to a point where you can use the strategies I'm talking about. So if you are completely debilitated and you cannot even try a breathing strategy, you cannot even try going for a walk, you cannot even try getting out of bed or speaking to a therapist, then yes, maybe medication is really necessary just to get you to a point where you can use those strategies. So medications fall into a few different categories. You've got SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and I speak about more how they work in the previous episode on Prozac and bulimia. You've got SNRIs, which is serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, and all this means is they help you get more serotonin into the brain, which is the feel-good hormone. Norepinephrine is that brain chemical, not hormones, they are brain chemicals, they are neurotransmitters, they're messengers in the brain. So it just helps your brain get more of that. Norepinephrine helps you get started on tasks. Then you've got benzodiazepines. These are not prescribed as an ongoing medication. These are used for panic attacks or really acute anxiety because they are very highly addictive, and each one works differently, so make sure you speak to your doctor about it. So again, they just work by increasing serotonin, your neurotransmitter with mood regulation, and they just can help you engage in life a little bit more. But what's important is there's a lot of side effects, right? Dizziness, nausea, headaches, potential weight gain, because they can make you dizzy and nauseous, so you're not going to really be exercising, or because they make you tired or fatigued, you may not make the best food choices. So it's not like they make you gain weight directly, but it's this indirect effect. And I've got another podcast episode on medication and weight gain. So what you need to know about it is these really key things. Write these down. This will help change anxiety and potentially change your life. 1, it's not the anxiety you need to stop, it's the perception of it you need to change, right? Imagine you feel anxious and you say to yourself, wow, I feel anxious. This is really uncomfortable and horrible, but I know it will pass, and I can do some breathing to self-soothe. My brain is just telling me that there's some danger, and there's no danger, versus, oh my God, I'm so anxious. What's going to happen? Something bad will happen. Why am I worrying? Shouldn't be feeling like this. This is so bad. I can't do this anymore. Everyone hates me. It's going to boost your cortisol. It's going to boost your adrenaline. So your key is to develop emotional mastery and emotion regulation. Same feelings, different thoughts, and thoughts control how you feel. Okay? So I want you to tell yourself, anxiety is just a message I need to accept and I need to unpack. Sometimes you don't know why you're anxious, and that's fine. Amygdala anxiety, the feeling anxiety, happens on a subconscious level, so you may not know why it's there. But the point is, you don't need to know why it's there. You just need to know what to do. And when you've got it, just say, it's a reminder. I need to use a physical strategy. Number 2, Anxiety is not going to kill you. The next time you feel anxious, just remember it will pass. It's uncomfortable, but the last time you had it, you survived. 3, learn about your anxiety instead of trying to get rid of it. People are obsessed with stopping anxiety and getting rid of it. But the truth is you need to work with it. You need to unpack it in order to function optimally. And finally, if it's physical anxiety, use a physical strategy, because when you are calm, you're able to use a cognitive strategy. And if you want help doing this, I have an express 4-week course called Unchain Your Brain. This is specifically for people with anxiety and people who want to manage it long term. It's an online program. You can do it in your own time. And I have a really special discount code for you. So if you scroll down in the notes, just enter podcast 50 into the checkout on Unchain Your Brain. You'll get 50% off for my special listeners here today. So finally, I want you to remember this. Make sure you're getting enough sleep and good quality of sleep. Stop having caffeine on an empty stomach. Delay it by 60 to 90 minutes. Slow down your mind, journal, meditate, and go for your daily mental health walks. Exercise is a must. If you have anxiety and you are not exercising, it is unlikely to get better. You have to exercise. And finally, use coping statements. Remind yourself that, you know what? I'm not going to be here forever. And even though I feel nervous and stressed, if today was my last day on earth and I didn't give a damn what anyone thought about me, what would I do? If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating. We only have 62 ratings and 30,000 people are listening to this podcast. So I'd really appreciate it if you left a quick rating or review, because that is what keeps the podcast going and it helps me know that you like it. So a massive thank you for being here. I can't wait for the next episode. You take good care and enjoy unchaining your brain. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I am truly grateful for you being here. If you got something out of today's show, please take a moment to leave a rating or review. To access more resources or support, check out the show notes below. See you next time.